What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. It's a solo dolo episode as I could not do this podcast while watching the Timberwolves versus Nuggets Game 7 as a basketball fan. And let me start by saying, how can you not be romantic about sports? Like the Cavs reached their first Eastern Conference semifinals since 2018 by a Game 7 victory, the same way they advanced in 2018. Not to mention, this recent win over the Orlando Magic was the first time the Cavs won a playoff series without LeBron James since 1993. I feel like Chris and I have reiterated this statement on countless occasions on this podcast by now, but that stat will forever be relevant and nuts to me. So let me start there because you all are here for Cavs updates, Cavs news. But I will be swinging back to the relevance based on recency from today's games. Don't you worry. But okay, for the Cavs, there are reports that multiple teams would be interested in Jarrett Allen if the Cavs are able to sign Donovan Mitchell to an extension and to sign Evan Mobley to a long term deal. We've talked about the leaps that Evan Mobley showed in this year's playoffs, being able to handle his own as the starting center rather than playing a primarily help side defender role in the power forward position. And Evan mentioned that the added reps at the center spot allowed him to get more comfortable in the role. So the automatic thought would be to move him to the full time five to continue to grow his game and become a player like Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan, as they were primarily power forwards to start their careers. But in my mind, I think the Cavs only need to part ways with Jarrett Allen if they can pair him with Darius Garland to get a major trade asset in this offseason, while both of their trade values are extremely or generally high. If you were able to keep the Twin Towers, the identity of the Cavs defense with Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, while moving Darius Garland and pushing Max Strus to the position that he's most comfortable in offensively and won't have to work so hard in on defense as a shooting guard, while acquiring a 3 and D small forward that can stretch the floor while Evan Mobley prioritizes his outside shot in the offseason merely to gain confidence. I mean, I think that could be a dangerous lineup because this would remove the small ball backcourt with Strus at the 2 that made defense a chore with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell for the Cavs at the point of attack whenever Isaac Okoro, Karis LeVert, or Dean Wade wasn't on the court this season. But I also think that Max Strus showed how capable he can be as a defender this season, and the thought of him hounding a smaller guard while keeping up with them speed-wise could pose well for the small defensive setback the Cavs saw with Evan and Jarrett on the court together this year, rather than how good they were in the last season. Also, still having Dean Wade off the bench as a stretch big and exceptional defender would be ideal for this Cavs team that has been in the top 10 in defensive rating the last 5 years with JB Bickerstaff at the helm. And this is where I get into my next point, and one that might send Cavs fans into a frenzy. I think the Cavs should keep JB unless there is information that I simply don't have where he's lost the locker room, because of coaches on the market right now are slim and far between. And I don't know if you could have said that you threw somebody in for JB Bickerstaff and they made an immediate impact in the Boston Celtics series. But it's hard to find someone who would know these guys, talking about the Cavs as well, or already have set relationships to be able to nurture their growth in the offseason, because that's what the NBA is. It's all about relationships and how well you know your guys and what they need in every situation. Because with Donovan Mitchell and other players' desire for success, the Cavs are in a win now situation. We're no longer in the rebuilding stage. JB Bickerstaff has helped them get out of that. He took them from a play-in team to a playoff team to a win in the playoff team. Now, it's how far can he take this Cavs team and if he's the right guy to do so. Especially after seeing the team's competitiveness with the Boston Celtics and the Indiana Pacers taking down the New York Knicks in 7 games. To be fair, the Knicks were down 4 of their ordinary starters during Game 7, but coming into the playoffs, I feel like there was a general consensus that the Cavs would have had a better shot in the playoffs against the Pacers, and the notion has been that the Cavs flopped in the final game of the regular season against the Charlotte Hornets to get an easier opponent, which ended up taking them to 7 games anyways against the Orlando Magic. So, I think the mindset of many Cavs players might be don't put any words in their mouths because they're not saying this. That should be us in the Eastern Conference Finals, whether it's them saying that they could have beaten or challenged the Boston Celtics fully healthy, or saying they could have taken down a hindered Milwaukee Bucks team or the Indiana Pacers as a whole. But that's the beauty of the playoffs. You never know unless it actually happens. Anything can happen. Because the Pacers were underdogs against the New York Knicks coming into the series and still pulled it out in dramatic fashion. And Tyrese Halliburton, I believe, has officially stepped onto the stardom stage. Now, I'm fading away from specifically talking about the Cavs, but just the beauty of this game we've all come to know and love. That's what I want to get into. Chris and I have predicted that the Boston Celtics and the Denver Nuggets would make it to the NBA Finals since before the playoffs began. Now that Sunday's Game 7s are completed, well, we can confirm that that isn't a possibility or an option anymore. The Denver Nuggets, the reigning champions, were dethroned by the Minnesota Timberwolves, and with the Nuggets' loss, the NBA will crown a new champion for the 6th straight season. Here is how crazy this game was. The T Wolves erased a 20-point second half deficit in Game 7 to advance to their first Western Conference final since 2004. It's the largest comeback in Game 7 history in the play by play era. So since 1997 and 1998 season, you know the last time the Timberwolves won a Game 7 to advance was specifically on May 19th, 2004. That's 20 years to the day of yesterday. And the craziest part may be that Kevin Garnett was on the 2004 team. And his birthday is May 19th, 1976. We even saw Carl Anthony Towns after the game say that that was their birthday present to KG. Like, how can you not be romantic about this kind of stuff, man? Like, this is beautiful. And even if you look to Saturday's games, I know this might hurt some Cavs fans, but Kyrie Irving saying that this is the hardest series he's ever had to go into and held back tears after the Mavericks win over the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, as a fan of the game that has watched Kyrie seemingly struggle to find a place that he's felt safe and vulnerable to be himself, it's finally nice to see him genuinely be him and be not only accepted but cherished. And don't hate the messenger now, Cavs fans. That might not have to do with the fan base, but it's deeper than that because I know Cavs fans showed a lot of love to Kyrie when he was in the land, especially in that 2016 NBA championship year. We heard Richard Jefferson talk about on a podcast the life that was breathed into that team when he was here and how much he would compare any arena to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse now and to anybody else in the Western Conference because of how great Cavs fans are. And I got to experience that firsthand this season. It was amazing. You guys do a great job. But Kyrie being able to feel this as a player, this goes further than him being a basketball star. It goes to him being a person. And we know how much Kyrie has dealt with in the media and everything else. So for him to be able to feel this way, it makes me feel a type of way. All right. Now you look at the bracket, and I still have Boston coming out of the East. And I honestly think it's a situation of good offense versus good defense in the West, while the Timberwolves have a pretty solid offense as well, as we saw they take down the Denver Nuggets. So if I have to make my new prediction, I'm going to have to go with Anthony Edwards to lead Minnesota out of the West. It's extremely hard not to, because as a person, I think Ant is as raw as it gets that we've seen in this league for some time now. I don't want to say he's not media trained, but he's authentically himself and wants the world to see it. Like, there has been a comparison between Ant and Michael Jordan, and people calling for DNA tests and all of the sort. And I honestly haven't looked at it that way, because my favorite part about Ant's game is that when all the other legends have played the game with a scowl, you think of Kobe Bryant, you think of MJ, you think of everybody that you can name, nobody really had the smile that Anthony Edwards does while he plays the game. And he still is locked in. There was literally a moment in game 7 when the camera panned to Anthony Edwards and he said something to the form of, "I'm going to turn up," after having a rough game to that point. And he did just that. I mean, he hit a tough 3-pointer to end the third quarter and continued to work in the fourth, carrying his team to the victory. And he gives credit to every other player on this team, as he should, because he wasn't the only one contributing. But all that to say, I think if you're a basketball fan, a fan of the sport, you are allowed to enjoy and appreciate the things that other teams are able to do well, even if your specific team is out of the running. But let me say this. There is no new Cavs news on my end other than the Jared Allen stuff that I got into earlier. Donovan Mitchell is with his friends. He was posting on social media looking like he's having a great time. He's even been posting other high school athletes and even collegiate athletes that he's been able to see, and has just been looking like he's been enjoying his time away from the game. So that's what I've been trying to get at this entire podcast. Being able to understand that these basketball players are actually real people, have real and true emotions, and still have lives that they live outside of the game. And for them to be able to be raw and be able to show us who they are, we have to continue to give them the platform to share their stories. While it may be difficult because of how much they might not trust the media or anything of the sort. I mean, Donovan is one of the more active basketball players that I've seen on social media, with how he just interacts with people he knows and asking players and fans where high school basketball games might be. But that's what it takes to be a star in today's league. Just being able to interact and have fun with the fan base and connect with them. It helps grow his brand, and I think that's part of the reason that the city of Cleveland loves him, because he feels like he belongs with them. And I guess we'll have to just find out and see how long he'll be here and if he wants to sign the deal. But that is not for me to tell as of yet. I'm going to let Donovan make that decision on his own before giving my thoughts on the situation, because in this coming week, I feel like a lot of news might be hitting the wire, and we'll just have to continue to be patient. Kobe Altman will be talking to the media at some point this week, and we'll get into all of those things and give more insight as that information comes, rather than just what could be. Because if there's no sources or anything behind it, it's harder for you guys to believe and be insiders. And that's what we want you to be. So, to be even more so an insider, let's get into this, because that will wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris and me by subscribing to Subtext. Sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me and Chris. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.